know Reggie Huffman is headbanging somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Welcome back to the locker room, guys. I am one of your four hosts. I am Kyle Anderson. Joining me as always, two of the best men in the business.
It's B. Jones live in the locker room.
Matt Hirsch, right here in the locker room.
And Reggie Huffman, he's missing in action, but he's here with us in spirit. He had some stuff come up. Apparently he said, he just couldn't hang with us today, so we told him that's fine. Just whatever it is, just take care of the court date and we'll be all right. So now we're talking about the NBA. With part one, guys, we talked about lockout, how did it affect the league. We all kind of agreed. It shortened the season. There were some good points and bad points to it. Now we're going to start talking about, okay, the NBA as a whole. Right now, we're going to go ahead and dust it off. Here it is. How does it compare to the golden years of the NBA? When you had Jordan, when you had Bird, when you had Magic. How do you think it compares right now as it stands with that time frame? Brandon, I'll go to you first.
I love those golden years. And one of the things that made the golden years so great is that you had those big markets, the New York Knicks, the LA Lakers, Chicago, Detroit. You had those traditional powers in the NBA doing well.
It wasn't just the big markets; it was the big names
too. And it was the big names. I'm willing to bet that most of the people who don't follow the NBA as closely as we do didn't know who in the hell Oklahoma City was before maybe a year ago. And Kevin Durant is one of the best players in the league.
They're still wondering whatever happened to Seattle Supersonics.
Yeah. So I think because the changing of the guard, the players are amazing, but because they're not in LA, they're not in New York, they're not Pistons, it's kind of like they're lost. Where the hell do you find them? So the league is hurting from that standpoint.
Matt, what do you think?
Well, a lot of it depends on if you're asking me now versus if you'd asked me at the beginning of the season. The golden years were awesome.
Amazing.
The 80s and 90s, Jordan, Bird, Magic, there's an older generation that's come. Well, the golden years was Wilt and Dr. J and all that, but the golden years really it was Sir Charles, even Scottie Pippen. But those were great years. They were fun to watch, and it wasn't necessarily just storylines like we were talking about earlier. It was players that you had an affinity for, players that you could really associate with, that you enjoyed being a fan of these individual athletes. Now, I can't say that the athletes are really comparable, even though they're very recognizable, probably more so than they were even a few years ago. So at the beginning of the year, I said there's no comparison. Golden years were fantastic. Nothing will ever match it. The playoffs got me questioning that, though, because these playoffs have been pretty fantastic.
And what's funny is building off of that, Matt, listening to some of our fans on the Facebook page, Exact Pain, he gave it a B-. Cole Gray said the season was okay, but the playoffs is A-. You got Brent Davenport, A+ all across the board. Will Vincent, everybody's saying the playoffs are the best. Even, Pete's a very good fan. Even though the Lakers, one of his teams is out, he still thinks it's a great playoffs. Why is it that the playoffs all of a sudden has just made everybody come alive, and it's like so much better than the regular season, where in the past it was regular season was okay and the playoffs just sucked?
Well, you're not playing the playoffs to get to the Lakers and the Celtics. I hate to say that. I might catch a lot of flack for that. Don't send me hate Facebook messages or hate emails or anything like that. It's probably the most traditional, fantastic rivalry in basketball, Lakers-Celtics. It's like Yankees-Red Sox or, locally Alabama and Auburn. But, the fact that we're not just mired in the playoffs just to see Lakers and Celtics, we're wanting to see something different, that helps. It really does.
Brandon, what do you think?
I think the surprises. I mean, look at Oklahoma City. Look at the run that the Spurs have made. The controversy surrounding the Miami Heat, the Chicago Bulls, even Derrick Rose and the injuries, the new start Philadelphia 76ers, the Memphis Grizzlies. There are a lot of good basketball teams in the NBA. There are a lot of great basketball teams. And I think that these playoffs have been the best playoffs I've seen in the NBA in some time.
Well, and going back to grading the NBA, I think that kind of going back to what we were talking about in part one, the shortened season I think helps. It really does. I think that if I was David Stern, I would looking at maybe shortening the schedule because I think that did play a role. It played a huge role.
Now, grading the NBA, going with a shorter season, right now as it stands, Brandon, I'll go to you first. What grade would you give the NBA season, regular season?
A.
Matt?
The regular season? B+.
Okay. Now going into the playoffs, Matt, what grade would you give the playoffs?
A.
Brandon?
A.
Now, a lot of our fans agree that the playoffs were better than the season, which is always because you're playing for something. It's you got to win or you go home.
Half the season feels like the playoffs, though.
Exactly. But what is it about? I mean, do you think, like you were saying, with the shortened season, is that something that David Stern is even going to contemplate, or does money start to come in saying, no, we need that longer season so we can make money?
Man, that got swatted, quicker than a jump shot, getting swatted by Dikembe Mutombo. Okay?
Who's this guy over here? He's taking all the flights.
I mean, they talked about it. It ain't going to happen. Because we're in the South and we're football crazy, and I really don't get into the NBA until Christmas anyway. Because I'm so caught up in, NFL, and even doing the NFL playoffs, I take my NBA break and then I hop back in right after the Super Bowl. But these other cities that are NBA crazed, no, it's not going to happen. It got brought up to David Stern. It got completely shut down. So no, it's not going to happen.
Matt, what do you think?
I don't think it'll happen. I mean, I'd like it to happen, but I'm pretty sure that it won't happen. But you never know with David Stern. That's the thing. He's been commissioner of the NBA since 1984. So for most of my lifetime, he's been commissioner most of all our lifetimes.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah. So, and he did some great things in the 80s and 90s. Granted, he had a lot of talent. It was probably easier for him in those times because that was the golden age, like we talked about. But he had new franchises, relocated a lot of franchises to where they needed to be. A lot of new arenas, but he's had a lot of lockouts. He's a lot of labor issues he's had to worry about, and he hasn't necessarily handled those very well. So I don't know what he would do. You just don't know with the guy.
Now, what grade right now? You're David Stern's boss. He's coming into you. You're giving him his job evaluation. Right now, Matt, what grade would you give him?
That's a tough question. Are you talking about his overall career, this year? What?
Just this year, right now.
Just this year? I would say B+.
Brandon, what would you say?
I'll give him a C.
Give him a C?
Yeah.
Why would you give him a C?
I have to take into account that you've had 2 lockouts up under your watch.
But just this year.
Just this year.
Just this year. Not not his entire career.
It's kind of hard for me to overlook that, but I'll give him a B.
Okay. I mean, that's understandable. Now, if you're looking over at his entire history of what he's done, what grade do you give him there?
So I'd give him probably a B or a B+ his entire career.
Okay. Brandon, would you still give him a C?
His grade would be to the point that his ass won't be commissioner anymore.
I could understand the frustration.
And here's the thing, though, is that in the 80s and 90s, you give the guy an A, I think. He did a pretty good job.
Definitely.
Once you get to the late 90s, he's earning straight C's and D's, and darn near flunking. He's, but, if you average it out, he's done okay. And here brings up another question. Listeners, weigh in on this one if y'all get a chance. Has David Stern worn his welcome out? Guys, if y'all could add to this, has David Stern been commissioner just way too long? He's, like I said, he's been commissioner since '84, so he's going on 30 years.
Yeah. David Stern worn his welcome out 2 years ago. Because this lockout didn't just all of a sudden happen. The collective bargaining agreement has been talked about for years before the lockout. David Stern said, no, there's no problem. The Players Association were coming to David Stern and say, hey, there's a problem. The owners were going to David Stern and saying, hey, there's a problem. So when you go on national television and you say, hey, there's no problem, it's business as usual, what we need to do is back a U-Haul truck up, to the office, pack your things up, put your stuff inside the truck, and let you drive away. His welcome has been worn out years ago.
I think his welcome probably has been worn out. I mean, when you've been commissioner since 1984, that's a long time. And I think now that everything's changed so dramatically, I mean, everything's moving faster, 24-hour news cycle. The game has changed. It's gotten quicker. The guys have gotten better. I think you kind of have to go with somebody a little bit that's a little bit more modern and knows what's going on and doesn't have the problems that he seems to have.
And I think a lot of fans and players that have some trust issues with the guy too, because not only with the lockout, the new controversy that's just come up here recently is the draft lottery, is it rigged? So he's got some big trust issues too. So I don't know.
But we all agree that the NBA is doing pretty good. It's getting better. I mean, the lockout kind of scared a lot of people, but we're getting better. I mean, the playoffs are great. It seems the only, pardon the pun, turd in the punch bowl seems to be David Stern. So it may not be that the NBA is in bad shape. Maybe David Stern is in bad shape.
The Dikembe Mutombo says David Stern has to go.
They need new blood.
Can't get jiggy with David Stern.
I think you're right. Now, that basically wraps it up for the NBA. Tonight, instead of doing my 2 cents, we've got a big thing to talk about. Our own Brandon Jones is going to be going down to Gulf Breeze, Florida to play in the national championship. I'm going to let Brandon tell you about it. Brandon, let us know what's all going on.
What it is the conference championship game for the PSFL. I play for the Rocket City Titans. We'll be going against the Nashville Storm. This is a rivalry game that's going to be for the conference title. Win Saturday night, and you'll automatically qualify to get in the semi-pro BCS National Championship Tournament. The thing that makes this game so big is we've played each other 4 times over the last 2 years. We split both games. We beat them in Nashville this year by the score of 23-21. Their kicker missed his first field goal in 2 years, and missed that field goal that would have been a game winner for them. So we became the first team since 2007 to beat them in Nashville. They came down to Huntsville and beat us in triple overtime, 22-16 win. So this game, it's heated. It's 2 teams that are ranked in the top 5 nationally, and it's big. It's big. People have been talking about it. Talk radio up in Huntsville, talk radio up in Nashville. It's a big deal, and it's something I'm very excited about, to get an opportunity to play in this type of game. Anytime you play for a championship, those moments are precious. So definitely excited about it. What do you guys think?
I think it's great. I mean, I really wish there was more people that were talking about this, because this is a big deal. I mean, here we have another chance for another team from Alabama to play for a national championship and probably going to win it. I mean, this really is a rivalry. I mean, y'all played 2 times. Each time it's gone down to sometimes even overtime. Mm-hmm. But somebody, like you said, somebody's going to break the tie.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't one of the players from Nashville on talk radio talking a little trash, saying some stuff like, "Oh well, there ain't going to be no tie this week, and we're going to beat the hell out of them."
Yeah, LaMarcus Coker, one of the running backs from Nashville, basically, went on, talk radio up in Nashville and said a few things I'm not really going to get into. I don't really talk, the games and talk radio. I like to do it between the lines, but like I said, man, the Premier South Football League is a league that has teams from Tennessee, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Mississippi. A lot of guys are SEC guys that you would know of. Nashville, right off the top, LaMarcus Coker from Tennessee, Carl Stewart from Auburn, Montavious Pitts from Auburn. We have Nikita Stover from Alabama, Jonathan Lowe from Alabama.
I wish there was more coverage, because of some of those names, and I really wish y'all well. I'm definitely rooting for y'all.
Yeah, I think you guys are going to win and definitely beat the crap out of them, so we can get another Alabama team in a championship game.
Definitely.
But, that's pretty much just going to do it for us tonight. But we definitely want to tell, Brandon, good luck, man. You're going to tear it up. You're going to do great. And Reggie, sorry you couldn't be here, man, but it's going to be all right, though. We'll see you next week. Guys, great show as always. Playing our song. Let's get out of here. Once again, it's The Locker Room. Join us on Facebook and definitely comment. Matt?
Hey, see you next time here in The Locker Room.
And Dikembe.